Welcome to the STEM Pathways with Rohan Sharma podcast, where we dive into the exciting world of science, technology, engineering, and math. In each episode, we share exciting stories, groundbreaking research, and inspiring interviews with experts and enthusiasts who are pushing the boundaries of innovation. Whether you're a student or professional, or just curious about how the world works, join us as we explore the endless possibilities of STEM. Let's get started. Today, I'll be interviewing Saivya Chauhan, who holds a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from UW Madison. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. So to get started, I wanted to ask what made you choose your major of mechanical engineering and what were your interests back in high school?
I picked mechanical engineering because, funnily enough, no pressure from parents, so I was allowed to pick whatever I wanted, and I wanted to pick something that was close to my heart. I have always been, and this is a very cliche answer, into cars, right? And I wanted to do something that would let me work on automobiles or even as close to aerospace as possible. And I ended up picking mechanical for that reason.
Mhm. And yeah, so what was your experience like at UW Madison?
It was it was an amazing time. I think college in general, regardless of it being UW or anywhere else, is super critical. You really find yourself as a person there. That's why I'm honestly shocked that you have a LinkedIn. I didn't even have a LinkedIn until I was like knee deep in college, and so I think it's super cool what you're doing, man. Uh, but in college itself, I think the key thing that I realized were what I liked and what I didn't like, and that wasn't just for studies, that was for everything, personal life, fitness, even other goals. And so I think college is really a time when you can be away and find yourself and in a way that is actually super productive. So I recommend college for everybody, even if you're confused about what major to pick, just go do general studies and then figure out what you might like from there.
Yeah. So yeah, what'd you do after graduating from college?
So my college experience post grad was is a little unique. Essentially in college itself, because of the because of my major, because of the clubs that I was involved in, there were a few extracurriculars that I was doing related to, for example, Formula SAE in UW Madison. That's basically SAE. Formula SAE is basically a college version of Formula One. You build your own Formula 3, 4 level car, and the team does it, right? The college team does it. And so through that, I got connected to something called Hyperloop, which was brand new for me. And this was still in college, right? So I got as a Formula SAE in my freshman year. Then I started learning about Badger Loop, which was our version of Hyperloop in UW. From that, once I knew what the hell Hyperloop was, it was basically a high-speed levitating train that Elon Musk had kind of envisioned. It's nothing new. It's actually a really old concept, but Elon kind of popularized it back in like the 2010s, and he wrote like a white paper on it. So that led me to down the rabbit hole of learning more about Hyperloop itself as a whole. I then applied for an internship. I got it. And that internship led to like a full-time opportunity while I was still in college. So I used to work for Hyperloop Transportation Technologies in LA from 2017 till 19. And that was like while I was still in college, right? So it was remote work before remote working was a thing. Now, how this ties back to what I did post grad is during my LA days, I had the idea to do what I'm doing now, which is building this company Blitz. Now, that idea has changed a lot in the last 6 years since I started the company, but I had the idea while I was working for Hyperloop. So post grad, I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna move to Indonesia, which is where I grew up, and I'm gonna launch Blitz over there, and that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm not gonna stay in the US. I'm not gonna work for an EV company or Hyperloop. I'm instead gonna just leave all that and just take this leap and figure out stuff from there. So that's what I did post grad.
Yeah. So before we get fully into it, what's like a really brief description of Blitz?
Brief description, we are bringing Amazon Prime to Southeast Asia. Basically, if you want to deliver something quickly like Amazon Prime does, and you don't have the facility to do that, you can outsource us and we'll do it for you. And we do it all on electric vehicles. So electric vehicle delivery is like the one sentence, one liner. But if you go a bit deeper, it's specifically instant electric deliveries.
Yeah. So what exactly gave you this idea in the first place and gave you the confidence to go ahead and start the company?
Okay, so what gave me the idea was when I was in LA, I saw these things called birds roaming around everywhere. And it was like this electric scooter that you could kind of pick up and use. And then I did a bit more research on it and I realized that it was the fastest growing unicorn. I don't know what the hell a unicorn is. So I dug a little bit more and then I got enthralled by just the VC and startup ecosystem. Unicorn, for those that might not know, is a company that is valued at $1 billion. And uh, that bird idea, these random scooters in the streets that I saw were valued at $1 billion, and that blew my mind. And so I kept researching more and more, and I wanted to bring something similar to that kin to Milwaukee first. And then I read about the laws in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and they had banned these scooters, right? The Wisconsin government had banned them. And so that kind of like squished any opportunity within the domestic Wisconsin region. So then I thought, wait a minute, let's just forget US. What if we take this where it's never been done before, which is Southeast Asia, which is where I grew up. And so that's what sparked the idea. Now, since then, and COVID kind of helped push this, we changed from tourism, which is what this was for basically, to logistics because we saw deliveries being more prominent. So we went from electric vehicles for tourism to now doing electric vehicles for deliveries. And what pushed me was the second answer, was the second question you'd asked, my dad. I remember to this day, I remember January 2019, I called my dad. It was my second semester of my senior year. And I said, hey man, look, I've had this idea for 6 months now. I don't know what to do because you guys put so much money and sent me here, and now I'm gonna leave all that and come back and then work there. And he said, don't think about any of that. Just do what you want to do and we'll support it. And that was the catalyst that I needed to just take the leap.
So what does starting a company even look like? What was like the first thing you did?
Oh man, it's not fun. It's not fun. Like I'll be very honest. It's this starting a company is not a fun thing. It everything that I had, everything that hooked me to do this was basically a lie, right? The glory of being a startup founder and entrepreneur and all that, that is there, but it is there for like 10 people out of 1 billion. That's the disparity, right? And so in the beginning, the two reasons why I wanted to pursue this was number one, once I had the idea, it just wouldn't let go. And number two, that unicorn thing kept being in my mind that this silly little scooter idea that somebody else did is doing so well. Well, I feel like I can do something a lot better, so mine will do well too. And my first entry point were just researching on my own. Then my second entry point became like a couple of podcasts back in 2019, 18, which were about starting companies. And that's when I learned, okay, who do I have to ask for money? What is an accelerator? Those kind of things. So then I looked at what Madison, Wisconsin could provide me. And the university had some things like accelerator programs, like G Alpha, G Beta, Generator, basically. Generator is a name. And I got involved in the local Madison initiatives. Then I learned even more what it is to be an entrepreneur. It was still super exciting. And then I would just randomly on LinkedIn message people nonstop, nonstop. I think for the first 2 years, most of the work was just cold messaging and emailing people like in mass and just building that network. And I did it shamelessly. So that's what starting it like was. Like I remember I would sit in Union South, which is Madison's like one of the places you can kind of chill in university, and then or the terrace where you can kind of overlook the lake and just send messages on LinkedIn nonstop all day long. That was my summer in 2019. And some of them worked. So I think of if I contacted like 10,000 people, 100 replied back. And those 100, maybe two were really interested and one put money into my company. And so it was just building that network from nothing. And that was the hard part.
What was your message? I know they have like the 200 character limit. You got to get it in.
But it has changed a lot because I still do that, by the way. I just do it for different reasons. But back then it was, hey, I'm a student in Madison. I have this idea. Can I just pick your brain, right? Because what I realized is that you don't want to ask somebody outright what you want But if you ask them for like advice or something where it makes them just talk a lot, people love talking. And so if they're just wanting to talk about something, you can pick their brain. That's a good way to hook them. And then you can kind of build that relationship first. And then if they're interested in what you're building, then they'll automatically kind of want to get involved somehow.
Yeah. So once you made all of these connections, what was the next thing?
The next thing was then building it, right? Because then I had to actually leave the US, come back here, and start doing things in person. So everything that I was doing in Madison, I started doing in person. And I remember in Madison too, I would just put on a blazer and just show up to like random events that I knew were happening related to startups, even if I wasn't invited, and just start shaking hands. And that led to more networking opportunities, and that's exactly what I did here. Then I started to just reach out specifically to folks that I wanted to reach out for XYZ reason. For example, okay, I know this person is a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist is a firm that deploys capital into startups. They put money into companies so that they can build the company. So I specifically started messaging and trying to meet those folks. One meeting led to another meeting, and then eventually we figured out our investor situation. And the next thing was building the product. It wasn't so straightforward. It took us like 2019, 2021. It took us 3 years to figure out the first product. And then the fourth year, it took us the insight that the first 3 years were a waste of time and to pivot away from that and to build something new. And so that was the fourth year. And that on the ground piloting is what took most of the energy. So that's what we did.
What was the first product?
Like I said, right, it was that bird lime thing. It was these kick scooters that you can kind of stand up on and just like accelerate with the click of a button, right? But it was very dangerous and it was meant for tourists. That would didn't work for two reasons. Number one, COVID happened, so that killed any potential. But number two, these things were just not making money. The amount of money you need to buy them, deploy it, and then have somebody use it on like $1 per day basis, it just didn't work. So COVID killed the idea for tourism, and the unit economics, as we call that, didn't work. It didn't make sense. You're buying something for $1,000, you're charging someone $1 a day. It'll take you a while to get that money back.
And how
Then
many of these did you deploy?
Zero, because the day that we were supposed to deploy them was March of 2020, and that's when we went into lockdowns. And so before we got, I remember I went to China in 2019, sourced the vehicles, met the factory owners, all that, right? We had the samples ready. The day of the launch was March 2020, and we just couldn't do it.
So you spent these next 3 years kind of like scrapping, and I guess you spent the next 2 years probably continuing on it, then realized it was a bad idea and then switched over.
Actually, we switched over pretty much immediately, but
Oh,
that's over into the new thing took some time. So that's why I kind of just bundle up into the same thing. Summer of COVID was okay, tourism dead. What is next? Deliveries are going up. Can we do something in logistics? And then I had to coordinate with China to get an electric scooter, like an electric motorbike here. And so the electric motorbike took a while to get here. But in that meanwhile, I was trying to ready some clients. And I got my first clients by going on LinkedIn, finding who the head of the country for DHL was and Domino's Pizza was, and just messaging them. I messaged the DHL guy. He replied back, luckily. And I said, hey, I have an EV company. I didn't. I said, we're doing electric deliveries. We didn't do it. But he was interested. And so he met me in my apartment lobby. I had one electric motorbike that I had ordered from China, from Alibaba, and I put some stickers on it. And he like, okay, we'll do a pilot with you. So now I had a freaking pilot with DHL. And so I used photos from that pilot to send it to like Amazon, the local Amazon here, Domino's Pizza. And I'm like, hey guys, I have an EV company. I'm working with DHL. We were just piloting, but that was enough of a hook. So the same thing I did to get the company started is the same thing I did to get the pilots to start. Just randomly messaging people and then kind of just forcing them to meet me and being stubborn about it and just saying, you're going to meet me and we're going to do this. And that's kind of how we did it, or rather, how I did it.
and throughout all of this, is it just you, or do you have like a big team behind you?
Zero people. It was just me. It was just me and my father. So until I hired my first employee in October of 2021, right? And that was when, so 2019 till 2021 is when I did all this nonsense and piloting. In 21, we had enough pilots with three big customers with just one vehicle that it was like, okay, now I can go back, raise some money, and then use that money to find people and hire them. So that I did in all of 21.
And how big's your team today?
Today we have, does it say in the back of this thing? No? Okay. Because I think it's around 80 people that we have today.
Wow. So once you got these pilots going, what happened next?
Once you get the pilots going, then so our initial idea was EV leasing. Basically, we were gonna rent out, we were like Hertz. We rent electric bikes to these companies. That was it. That collapsed immediately. I raised money for the idea, I hired people, and in 2022, we were gonna do a big launch with that. And we had about like 400, no, 200 something bikes that we had already ordered. And DHL, Domino's, the other clients took not a single one of them. They did pilots with me, but they didn't take a single one of them. And I was like, holy smokes. We have invested so much money into these vehicles. There's no money coming in. And that was the third pivot because we realized what these companies wanted was not to rent vehicles. They just wanted faster deliveries. And so when all I did is I then took my tuner bikes. I found random Uber drivers. I was like, hey, I'll pay you better than Uber. You work for me. And we became a logistic company overnight. That took a whole year. That took 2022. In 23, we were now a logistics company with zero tech, no tech. It was all on WhatsApp and Excel sheets. So 23 was about building our tech, and that took almost 2 years to build our tech. So today we have a fleet of 1,500 couriers with 80 people that are full time, and we run operations in all over Indonesia to do instant deliveries because now we have the tech capabilities. And the biggest validation of this tech is I got to meet Jensen Huang last month because we're now working with NVIDIA as one of their portfolio companies to use their AI platform tools into our systems. And so that's why we got the NVIDIA logo over there because we work with them now. And that was like the biggest moment of probably the biggest, most validating moment of my life so far,
How'd you even
professionally.
get to that?
Shamelessly, like I said, right? I weasel myself into random networking events. On one of the events, I was pitching. I had like a 30-second slot. That's it, because they didn't want to give me a slot, but I just pushed myself anyways. And they're like, okay, we'll give you 30 seconds at the end of the event. And I pitched, and there was a lady from NVIDIA there. She's like, I like what you're building. I know you didn't get to pitch, but let's talk. And that led to the partnership with NVIDIA. And if I had not forced myself to just shamelessly network like I do, I would never have had the NVIDIA opportunity come by.
Wow. So what are your future goals with the company right now, and what are you currently working on?
The goal for the company now for 2025, and that's why this week has been absolutely so overwhelming, is planning for 2025, and we're going to be doing international expansions, right? I want us to be in more countries through our tech. We're right now a tech and operations business, like Uber is. Uber runs operations and they have tech. But what we want to do is take our tech and use it to expand to other countries. So like North America. We already have a couple of pilots in other Asian countries. My family is in Canada, and so I want to be doing some pilots in Canada and use that to enter the US market. So that's something we're working on already. But that's what 2025 looks like for us is just more development in our tech, bigger partnerships with NVIDIA, and let's see from there.
Yeah. So for my last question, I wanted to ask if you have one piece of advice for someone who's still in high school or early in college wanting to follow a similar career path as you.
Uh, okay. I would say be very open-minded. And my sister just started college last year, right? So she's in her second semester. It's the same thing I told her. Just be open to saying yes to things, even if you don't like it. It's because if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, you can get pretty far ahead. And what I've seen in the last 6 years, based on all the types of folks I've ever met, the ones that are successful and they tend to live quite long as well because they're working till their very last day, they tend to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you're not born into money, you just gonna have to network and get out there and put yourself out there. It's very uncomfortable for people that are introverted, and I get that, right? I was like that too. But the more opportunity you give yourself to kind of venture out there, the more you'll realize it's not that hard. I mean, yes, there are the day-to-day gets hard, yeah, but the actual opening yourself up and just exploring opportunities is not so difficult. It's the same way you're gonna excel in college, right? Say yes to the rowing team, say yes to this club, say yes to that club, and see what your likes and dislikes are. So it kind of ties back to how I started this conversation. I recommend everyone go to college, you figure out what you like, what you don't like, and then you kind of build on that in life. So just try to say yes to things that you might not know if you like, because you might end up liking them.
All right then. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, likewise, man. Thanks so much.